Gracie, you can reward yourself. You're the first person to make that connection in about 100 interviews.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, both of you. I know you have a busy press day, so I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Not at all. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I want to start off with you, Sophie. Obviously, in a film where survival often means looking out for yourself, I found that your character, Ellie, stands out in the way that she's a real source of compassion and humanity, from her nursing instincts to the way she just cares for her friend group and even her newfound feelings for Chris. So I'm wondering, as an actress, how did you approach balancing Ellie's desire to save everyone versus her fear for herself and now for Chris?
I mean, I think that's what drew me to the character immediately was this sort of like selflessness about her, that she really would do anything for anyone, I think, to some extent. But obviously, when you love someone, like love has no boundaries. But yeah, I think she's always had this sort of idea of where she wanted to go and where she was headed and all these ambitions. But I think a very strict rule book to some extent and someone that really wanted to please. And I think it's been finding Chris is something that I didn't think she knew she needed
Mm.
until it kind of happened and it caught her off guard. And I think she realized that maybe she lost sight of who she was a bit in a way in terms of like being so rigid. And I think um Chris brings out this side of her that's a bit more rebellious and willing to take risks and willing to like fight and not be scared of other people's opinions, whereas usually I think she was kind of
Mm.
the cool and popular girl, but still like somewhat in other people's shadows or always wanting to please. So finding someone who's so unapologetically herself, like Chris, I think is they just both brought out the best in each other.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful dynamic to watch grow throughout the film. And you see her kind of open up from the start to the finish. So I love that you bring that up, that she kind of makes her feel more herself.
Yeah, that was really lovely the way you performed that, and Sophie brought such sort of warmth and this kind of like light in her eyes. You could see it for the first time. And when you're sitting, I love it when you're sitting in the detention and you hear Chris come in, and you just got this just a generosity to you that comes out.
Yeah. That detention scene to me kind of felt like a really messed up Breakfast Club.
Yeah,
Was
absolutely.
that was
Yeah.
that talked about at all?
When I created a little WhatsApp group for the cast, and it's called the Breakfast Club. So yes,
Is it really?
yeah, it's obviously a reference with the sort of types in the school and these disparate kids who have all been pulled together through a detention. So if you like, it's the Breakfast Club that goes into horror movie.
Definitely. I would love to talk to you about when the whistle is actually blown. I could be reading way into this, but the design and the way that you shot this was so beautiful. And the fact that the lens looks kind of blurry on the outside, it's kind of like a fisheye lens.
Mm.
And to me personally, it felt like it was death looking at these people. So I'm wondering,
Okay.
what was your process for crafting these shots and making this kind of the signal of the beginning of the end of these characters?
Gracie, you can reward yourself. You're the first person to make that connection in about 100 interviews. Bjorn Charpentier, the DP, will be so thrilled to hear you. You said even the right words because we called it the death lens.
Okay.
It isn't a fisheye lens. It's a really interesting lens that Bjorn would be able to talk to you about for hours. But it had this aberration on it, which creates this sort of hazing on the outside. And it was, when we went through all the different lenses, we said, oh, this is the death lens. So we carried the death lens everywhere we went. And it was like, is this the death lens shot? And it was effectively sort of death's, well, it's sort of like the presence of your death is now in you, close to you. So that's when you'll see it. And you'll see it if you look at all those sequences at some point there. Um,
Yeah.
so that was intentional with the cinematography aspect. And I can't remember the rest of that question. Sorry. What was
Just
that?
how do you go through the creative process of deciding what shots you want to
Yeah.
specify on and make them those important ones as opposed to the ones that are more silent but still effective?
Well, you sort of build up your own language in any movie, and in horror, I think even more than ever, because you're really trying to suspend belief and make sure the audience doesn't get bumped on anything. So um, that I guess there was different lenses and different choices for different parts of the storytelling. And you'll see when a character is getting sort of seduced by the whistle, almost like the ring in Lord of the Rings. And you can see it in when Mr. Craven or Grace or Chris handles it. And we'll go into a sort of almost a sort of slight hazy moment as the whistle is kind of calling out to you. So there was a language we built up that determined what we were going to shoot on, and then there was the death sequences themselves, which were quite elaborate, and every single one was different and had a different sort of subgenre of horror to be based around. So there was a sort of more body horror or more kind of possession-like horror or slasher horror or abstract, psychological horror and things. So it almost all came from the source, which is this mythological idea of if you hear the whistle scream, it'll call upon your future death, whatever that may be, to come and visit you and hunt you down, and you'll be face to face with you in your last moments, which was always quite an interesting debate to have and, design around.
Definitely. And I know we're running out of time, but I do want to ask, I love making playlists for films and for characters. So I'm wondering for each of you, what's a song that you would use to describe the film, but also Sophie, for you, your character throughout this journey?
Corin, you go while I go on to Spotify.
I was going to say, I'd love to hear Sophie's one if it's like not a song in the movie, but a song that you can think of that's like Ellie. I mean, I've got to talk about the music in the movie because it was such a big part of it for me, and I do the same. I grew up making compilation tapes for my friends. I now make many sort of playlists for different moods and different projects. And when I took on Whistle, it was no different, and I made a playlist called Death Lives, which was sort of like one of the sayings in the movie.
I
Um,
love that.
and I'm going to make it public at some point, and it's probably about 300 or so songs, and it was just lots of music. A lot of it was like housing the kind of vibe that I wanted the movie to have, a timeless feel, inspired by some of the 80s movies and music and bands through the 80s and 90s. Out of that list came some key songs that I'd always been waiting to try and find a way into a movie. One of them, I think for me, one of the ones I'm most proud of is Concrete Blonde Joey, which was like a song that I just loved and I've sung at karaoke and I've always wanted to like find a place for it. And when I did Whistle and came up with this idea that Chris would have inherited her father's record collection, which just happens to be, my playlist to some extent, it was a nice way to sort of find places. And, another one was the Gunship Cyndi Lauper cover of Time After Time, which is a very sort of rel track. And Church's Final Girl. I'd listened to the Church's album and I was like obsessed with it, thinking this is it feels like straight out of Nightmare on Elm Street or something. And when I met with them, they were big fans of Elm Street and the sort of teenage high school horror genre. So getting to use these tracks was a big. I was just very thrilled, and also the Doomphonic score, which we're going to be getting a release on vinyl of the soundtrack. So I'm excited about that
I'm
too.
so ready to put that up on my vinyl wall. It was so good.
Excellent.
Honestly, I can't top anything he said. I'm so sorry. My answer is so boring. I can't. I'm like ashamed to go after what he just said. He describes the
Just
movie so
completely
well.
ignore everything he just
So I don't know. I think like I just am not the biggest horror gal. Like nothing in my library sounds horror to me. I listen to like jazz and
But that's what I mean. It should be some jazz. I mean, that's what maybe you and Ellie, I mean, it's
yeah,
what, you know,
yeah.
I
maybe
love.
you can influence it.
Yeah.
I mean, that ending was insane, so I can't wait to see the obviously the post-credit scene. I can't wait to see what's next for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm out of
Thank
time,
you.
but thank you so much for
Great
your
to
time.
meet you. Cheers, Gracie.